Hello, everyone. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the Centre for Legal Innovation's Digital Literacy Series. We are absolutely delighted to welcome back our good friends LOD, who will present this third part of a three-part series looking and diving into the functionality of Office 365. Today, they're going to focus on LOD365, which is basically how they've taken Office 365 and I'm going to say put it on steroids. I hope that's okay, Amanda and Jemima, if I describe it that way. If you haven't had a chance to catch the productivity and collaboration aspects of Office 365 that these folks have already kindly covered for us, do go back and watch them. They were tremendous sessions, as this one will be as well, I'm absolutely certain. So all of those things being said, and I know we're kind of all ready to go, let me introduce Amanda Fajerman for you. Amanda is the Head of Legal Technology at LOD, and Jemima Harris, who is the Head of Legal Operations and Tech also at LOD. So Amanda and Jemima, I'm now going to go away, but I'm here if you need me and really looking forward to this one. Thank you so much. Welcome to you and welcome to everyone.
Thanks, Terry, and thanks everyone for joining us. I can see people starting to join, which is great. My name's Jemima Harris, as Terry just mentioned, and I'm joined by my colleague Amanda Fajerman. Amanda and I are both lawyers who've worked in private practice as well as in-house, and these days we focus on helping lawyers improve how they work using process improvement and technology. We've worked with a number of tech solutions over the years, but most recently we focused on Microsoft and in particular the Power Platform, which is what we'll talk about today. Here's a quick agenda of what we're going to cover. For those of you who have attended our first two sessions on productivity and collaboration, you'll have learned about how to get the most out of some of the Microsoft apps you might not have been fully aware of, and help with productivity on an individual level as well as helping you collaborate effectively as part of a team. And today, in the third and final part of this series, we're going to show you how the workflow automation tools within Office 365 can supercharge your in-house legal team by bringing together those productivity and collaboration tools with some of the lesser known members of the Office 365 family, the Power Platform, which includes Power Apps and Power Automate. You can use these tools to help you manage workflow, automate documents, and capture and analyze data about the work your team is doing. It's pretty exciting, and I think Terry's description of it as Microsoft on steroids is pretty apt. We're going to focus on, as well, a legal tech solution we've built using these apps called LOD365, as well as showing you how you can use some of those components yourself to DIY and solve some of the challenges you might be experiencing. The Power Platform is a real game changer for the legal industry, which I think in general is behind the 8 ball, and we often pay large fees for legal tech, which it looks very shiny, but isn't necessarily solving the problems it promises to solve. The Power Platform has changed this and really allows legal teams of any size to create their own platform using the tools they've already got. We've got a bit of ground to cover, so we'll move quite quickly. This, as Terry mentioned, will be recorded so you can come back to it in your own time, and we're very happy to field any questions afterwards. Go to the next slide, please. Amanda's driving because it's much safer that way. So a quick recap on why we're focusing on Microsoft in case you missed that from the earlier sessions. The vast majority of lawyers across the world use Microsoft. A recent survey out of the UK indicates the numbers as high as 77%. So most of us are using it, so it's good to look at what we've already got. It's incredibly powerful software, and most people underutilise the capabilities simply because we're not aware of what it can do. We're a Microsoft partner, and as far as we know, we're the only law firm in the world that has this status. And the reason we've partnered with Microsoft is that we think it's pretty great and offers fantastic features that are constantly being updated. One of the great benefits of the Microsoft suite is its flexibility. You can use the same tools in a lot of different ways, and how you and your colleagues might choose to use them really depends on the challenges you're looking to solve, what you want to accomplish, who you're collaborating with, and the applications you prefer to use as the base. A quick recap on where to find the apps, so you can see what you've got. So the Office portal is at office.com, and that's a launching pad for accessing all of the apps that you've got. You can see there's the different kinds of apps in there, whether they're the Office 365 ones, business ones, or customized applications. If you have any questions around how to use them, I'm sure your IT teams will be able to help you, but you can see there's a lot in there, and most of this is standard. That'll be familiar if you've attended the earlier sessions.
And this is another breakdown of the way we have categorised some of these tools. So as Jemima said, in the first session, we covered that lower tier of basic productivity tools. In the second session, we covered Microsoft's collaboration tools. Now, these tools and these apps are all quite complex, and the use cases are quite complex and overlap. So use those guides as inspiration rather than prescription. There's no right or wrong between how you use what app for. And in today's session, we're going to cover that third element, which is the workflow automation tools using the Power Platform.
Now, before we get into looking at the tech in too much detail, because we're legal ops nerds, I think it's really important to consider the challenges that these tools might solve for you. So it's really good to ensure you get a solution that meets your needs, and it really helps with change management and uptake of a new solution. So these little speech bubbles coming out of this chopped up head look at lots of matters. Legal service industries are among the few industries that have a high volume of concurrent projects and matters and requests for advice. So we're juggling lots of different things at any one time. On average, a large legal department can be working on hundreds of matters a month. So there's a lot of information, a lot of matters to be looking after. Then information more generally, lawyers process huge amounts of information that come from a number of different sources and need to consider instructions from a client, advice from external counsel, commercial strategy, a company's risk portfolio, regulations, contractual obligations, all of those sorts of things. And you'll notice that a lot of the challenges I'm talking about are particularly focused on in-house legal teams, but I think this can apply more generally too. In terms of data, legal are often the custodians of data within an organisation, and often other people's data. Legal is often the repository of the organisation's non-financial information. They're expected to be able to find contracts, agreements, latest variations, and certain types of correspondence. And then finally, systems. There are often multiple systems that the data needs to be fed into, or that the legal team might need to be using, or that the business expects them to use. So that might relate to a filing system for emails or managing contracts. There's a few different things there. So what can cause some challenges relates to poor information management. From our research, we've estimated that the average office employee, and I'm sure you're all above average, spends around an hour to an hour and a half every day looking for information that you've already have. That may seem hard to believe, but if you added it up, 5 minutes looking for an email, 10 minutes asking your colleague for a document, emailing to ask for it, saving it back to your drive, that can add up quite quickly to around 5 hours a week that you could aggregate, and the cost of that time is quite significant. The best legal teams are experts at information management so that they and their clients can access it really quickly without remaking or rebuying it and not wasting time. And having a good system, once you've got good processes in place, can really help make that a lot easier for everyone. So putting that into block form, all of this really relates to information and knowledge management. We work with lawyers all around the world to help them improve the way they work, including in private practice, but mainly in-house, and also with related business units like compliance and procurement, because there's often a lot of crossover there. And some of the main areas we see lawyers struggling with are precisely things like this: wasting time searching for information, with contracts, managing a contract life cycle from generation through to execution, and then storing and maintaining those documents so that key milestone dates are not missed. Then in relation to matters, managing a matter life cycle or a project life cycle from triage and allocation when it comes into the legal team, keeping clients up to date with matter status, and then knowledge and documents for the creation, storage and sharing of work. documents or knowledge and using templates and playbooks to leverage existing knowledge and work more efficiently together. Then in relation to the challenges of lawyers creating content, when we're working, we need to be able to store and file the content that we create, to be able to search and find that content, to plan work and collaborate with our teams and report on that content. And none of this is new to Microsoft, who promote the Power Platform as achieving these 3 goals: analyze, act, and automate. And that's kind of going to be the theme of the next part of our session. Other industries have been doing this in Microsoft for years, but legal has been a little bit late to the party.
So one of the most common questions we get asked is, we've got Office, but we don't know how to make the most of it. What app should we use for what? And that was really the premise for these 3 series for the digital literacy series. The first layer here isn't going to be groundbreaking. You use your standard apps like Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, Excel for your content creation. And then in session 2, we covered SharePoint for the storage of your content. SharePoint and OneDrive there acting as your central source of truth for all knowledge, whether they're matters, contracts, documents, and set up with a proper structure with your metadata. The functionality of SharePoint really does rival any other bespoke document management system on the market through its ability to have automatic version history and real-time collaboration. Then again, in the second session, we covered these planning tools. So this is this bucket of project management tools or planning tools, where these soft skills like managing a personal to-do list is actually more than just a soft skill. It really impacts on a lawyer's performance, their ability to communicate with other team members, particularly in today's age where everyone is working remotely, being able to report to internal stakeholders on matter status and collaborate with a team where everyone is doing multiple parts of a project means that you've got to be able to use the tools like Planner and To-Do to function effectively. And then lastly, we spoke at length in the last section on Teams. Teams really being the workhorse for Microsoft. Teams is really pulling it all together, pulling your SharePoint, your ability to chat, communicate, meet, share files, all that functionality of Teams is really pulling together all the information that a team needs to function in one central place. And so what we're going to focus on for the rest of today's session is this third tier, which is analyze, act, and automate. Within Power BI, you've got the ability to analyze and visualize your data to enhance your decision-making capability. So it pulls together whatever data that the legal team is using, whether that is about matters or documents or contracts. You can feed that data into Power BI so that you can dynamically slice and dice that data to make informed and confident business decisions. Then with Power Apps, you've got the ability to create custom applications that are no-code, device agnostic, using the organisation's own data. So it's integrating with your Active Directory so that there's single sign-on. So you've got one place where all the data is being stored that can then pull all the information from all the other Office applications together in one place and turn that insight into action and build a bespoke web application or a mobile application for your company to use. And then lastly, automation. This is where you can automate any sort of workflow, any sort of repetitive manual task through Power Automate. Now, whether or not that automation is a preset trigger, so on this action or on this trigger, do this, or it can be an alert, or it can be an automated reminder. We'll show you a little bit later how easy and quickly it is to use some pre-built templates within the Power Automate gallery to get automations up and running quickly and easily. And so that is really what Microsoft's Power Platform is. It consists of 4 applications. I'm just going to focus on the first 3, being Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. Power BI, unlocking insight and intelligence. Power Apps, really converting that intelligence into smart applications. And Power Apps, automating workflows, processes, and then looping back into Power BI for continuous improvement.
And so you can see here, it's all quite circular. They all feed into each other and work together, as Amanda's just explained. And I guess the question is, what does this all mean in terms of improving legal processes? And I guess our advice would be just to start small, using some of the templates that will show you where to find. Have a go at doing some basic workflow automation and build on that and improve. And so now for the fun part, how to do it. We're going to show you how you can use some of these tools yourself and automate some tasks and documents, as well as walk through the solution we've built for legal teams using some of these tools so you can see what's possible. So having looked at all of this, we've used some of the apps we've just mentioned to solve some of the common challenges that we've highlighted that a lot of our clients were telling us about, and we call it LOD365. It's a solution that we've built using these Microsoft tools and bringing together our knowledge of legal processes and in-house lawyers' ways of working with technology. That covers matter management, document management, contract management, and Amanda will show you how all of that works, as well as how you can use some of these components yourselves to DIY, as I mentioned.
So what you can see here is a quick snapshot of the way the system can slice and dice things like matter status, how you can create dynamic charts and then go and drill down into any of those metrics to get further insight on capacity, work types, risk levels, to provide insight. You can create custom views for teams, individuals, and you can also aggregate and report on data. Now, in this case, we're dealing with metadata, so that you can, for instance, create a dispute register and report on any sort of information across the team and drill down in any way. It's almost like, I call it 4-dimensional data. You can point a pin through every single tab in every single spreadsheet. You can point a pin through every single folder and every single briefcase and in every cupboard and say, tell me what that looks like in an aggregated view of the world. And so through that analysing, you can then get insight that you know what the right problem to solve. And so that really takes us to what we're going to describe here, which is a matter life cycle. So in this case, we're starting off with an intake form. So we're using Microsoft Forms to capture instructions and make sure that the business, in whatever form it is capturing the right instructions. You can see here we've got Power Automate, then working to create some automatic email notifications. And through actionable emails, you can act on that straight from email without leaving your Outlook. You can then have a system of allocating and triage and assigning matters within the team. So you can assign matters to yourself, you can assign matters to others, and you can have that as using the insights that you get from the system on capacity to allocate matters to the right person. You can then configure the matter statuses that are right for you and your team. This is a bit like the buckets in Planner, so that it can reflect the way your team wants to work. And then through these dashboards, through this reporting, you can get insights about your particular matter. Now, this data is going to get pulled straight from the intake form. If that form was completed, you can enter things like due date, the reasons for that due date, which is really important for the legal team to say, how am I going to prioritise my work? What's the matter assessment fields that this work relates to? What is the last activity on a matter? What have I missed? What information do I need to know that maybe I wasn't part of, or an email that maybe I didn't receive that has been tracked? And allow you to search that data across and search that timeline to find information across any within the team. You can capture all sorts of approvals within the team, all sorts of approvals, whether or not that's approving the matter or approving a contract, capture the counterparty, capture time spent on a matter so that you can start to report on, is my team working on the right matters at the right time? Have a central source of truth for all emails in relation to that matter so that every email is tracked and you can have a central source of truth. You can report on tasks, so you can break down the tasks into a number of components and capture all documents in one central place, and that's integrated there with SharePoint, and have an audit history so that every change in the system is recorded and you know exactly who made what change to what field and when. Moving on to tracking things in a little bit more detail, you can see here we're integrating with Outlook, so we can have folders within our inbox that relate to the matter, and through simply dragging and dropping emails into that folder, those emails are going to get tracked to the matter. And every email in that email chain is also going to get tracked. Now, even if you weren't the recipient of that email or the first email, everyone who has a license for Power Apps will be able to say, hey, I'm going to record this matter, I'm going to track this matter. You can see there on the right-hand side that the 10 most recent matters automatically come up in view, and you can quickly and easily track your matter. You can go and then see information about the matter and click on those fields if you want to open the matter in the Power Apps system. The matter records mean that you can slice and dice the information in that data, as I showed you in the analyze phase. And so I'm going to skip over that here and just touch quickly on search. By having all this information in one central place, you can search across any content, whether that content is in a metadata field, in the content of an email, somebody's name, whether or not that's an internal stakeholder, an external law firm. So the power to search is really, really powerful. And then you can slice and dice and drill down that data, display charts, and you can also open this in Excel. And again, this power of having everything in one place, having it in Excel, being able to open this view in Excel online means you can run through any of these data points in real time, change the status, change the metrics, change any of these fields. And because it's in Excel online, when you save it, all those matter records are going to get updated in real time straight away. So that there's no saving matters into opening your documents, saving it back to the drive, emailing it out. Everyone's using the same live version of the document. And you can see here, lastly, through legal budget management, you can record invoices, you can record spend, and you can drill down on spend by external counsel to say which clients are spending money on external counsel, what matters are we briefing, and is that the right way we should be spending our money, so that you can understand what matters are high spend and where you might want to recruit, for example, another resource to handle those matters, and report on all the matters that a law firm is being briefed on. So lastly, this is where you can take that data and through your dashboards, through your charts, report through dynamic dashboards for reporting, whether or not that's on an individual basis, a legal team basis, or even executive reporting. So many lawyers aren't aware that you've got document automation tools within your existing Office 365 suite. You can see there that there's a Vimeo link to a tutorial that we posted earlier this year. It really brings together the power of Word, Microsoft Forms, and Power Automate. And we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. And we'll show you how you can tag fields in any sort of document. Here we've got a confidentiality agreement. You can create a questionnaire through Microsoft Forms to capture the answers to the questions, and then pull it all together through Microsoft, through Power Automate. Now, if you don't have the developer tab as part of your ribbon, you add it through the options, and that then opens up a developer tab, which will enable you to say, what are the fields that I want to automate? And click on add a rich content field and customize these fields. Now, there's probably an exercise that you're going to go through before this point. You're going to think to yourself, what are the fields that I want my user to answer? What's the question that I'm going to ask them? What type of data am I going to present them with? Is it going to be a free text field, a date field? Is it a drop-down option? So there's a whole process when you go through when you're going to make sure that your documents are automation ready. There are simple fields like who are the counterparty, what's the date? And then there can be some more complex things here, like I want to only insert this limitation of liability clause if the user answers the questions in a certain way, or I want option A if they select mutual, and I want to insert option B if they select one way. So depending on the extent to which you want to automate a document is really going to largely drive what the questions you're going to ask and in your Microsoft form, and then the conditions that you're going to put into your Power Automate workflow. And lastly, it's also going to impact on the sort of approval processes that you might want to include in your system. So maybe you only want to insert that clause if certain approvals have been obtained. The whole point here is to reduce manual workflow. So I'm going to go, and this is again showing you how to go through this in detail. I showed you how to create some forms. Now taking you into Microsoft Form, it's as simple as creating a new form. I've got some pre-set questions that I've asked in a previous form. I can add them, so I can copy questions from one form to another. And you can see how quickly and easily it is to create a new form, customize it, decide what type of question I'm going to ask, whether or not it's going to be free text, a long answer field, a short answer field, whether it's a required field and not a required field, if it's a choice, a checkbox, etc. I'm going to open a form that I've completed earlier, and you can see that I've built it out in a little bit more detail. And depending on the answers, I can add in conditional logic. So I can add in some branching here to say, if the answer to new client, if they select a new client, follow it up with question 7. If it's an existing client, follow it up with question 8 or 9, etc. So it's really quite powerful in the conditional logic and the type of questions you can ask. Once you've created your form, you can share that form with others. So here I can share that link to anybody in my organisation, and if I do, then it'll automatically recognise me as a user, or I can share it with others. Now you can see here through Power Apps, I can now also create Power Applications. Now, if you don't have all those applications when you log into Office, then it may be that you do need an Office for extra license for Power Automate, but they are very simple and they're not expensive. And you can see some of the templates that are available and some of the triggers that are available to you. So none of these things I'm building from scratch. I'm going to take a template to create a task on the submission of a Microsoft form. I'm going to link it to the form that I've just created and say, capture those responses from that form. And then when a form is submitted, create a task in Planner, add a notification in Teams, and I can quickly and easily check if the data that I've entered through this flow is right. You can see there, Flow Checker said, nope, there are no errors. I can customize this template by populating a Word document. So I'm going to add in new steps. Again, here I'm going to pull in that Microsoft Word document that I worked on before. I'm saying, this is where you're going to point to. This is the file. This is this LOD consulting terms document that I added in those fields. And it's automatically pulling in those fields which I identified using my developer tab. And what I'm going to do here is link the fields to the answers to the question to the form. So the date field corresponds to the date that the user is going to answer. Counterparty field corresponds to the counterparty name that the user answered. So every field is getting matched here with a question. And you can insert the text. So if I wanted to add in conditional logic here, the limitation of liability clause, in this case, I'm just going to put in some text, but I could add an expression here. I can make it quite complicated. I can actually add code if I want to say, if the answer to the question was mutual, enter this clause. If the answer to the question was one way, enter this clause. Once I've populated my Microsoft Word document, I want to create it as a file. So I'm now going to say, create that file and save it here. And I'm going to save it, in my example, I'm going to save it to OneDrive. I'm going to customize the name of the file that I'm saving. So I'm going to call it contract details with the counterparty and LOD. And I'm going to create that content in that file. Again, this could be an Excel document. In this case, it's a Word document, but the type of, you can make it straight into a PDF document if you don't want your end user to be able to edit any fields. I'm then going to send an email. Now, again, you've got a number of options available to you. You can add an approval element. to send it to somebody for approval. In this case, I'm going to send it back to the user who answered the questions in the form, but you could send it to any team or any individual. You can customize the email that gets sent so that you really have the power to automate any manual process here. And we've had teams across LOD, both internally and for our clients, use this to automate confidentiality agreements, purchase orders, supply agreements, even our own internal secondment agreements have been automated in this fashion. Don't forget when you're doing this to actually attach the document, and then you'll be able to troubleshoot in real time whether or not your flow has worked. And it's actually an incredibly great feeling when things have worked. So I'm going to quickly run through this questionnaire here. I'm answering the questions to the form, and I want to see so that this automated workflow is going to trigger on completion of this form. Your trigger could also be automated, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a form, but in this case it is. You can see there that my conditional logic is working, and I'm going to answer a series of questions. Now, that you may be asking questions which are not only related to the information you need to automate the document, but also information that you may want to give to your lawyer. Say, this is highly important. This is really strategic. This is, this is confidential, so don't share it with anyone. So whatever information, whatever data you want to capture can get included. You can see there that in Teams, a notification has been added. In Planner, a new to-do has been added. And in Outlook, I've received an email with that document already attached. And that all happened instantaneously at a click of a button.
So there's quite a lot in there, and appreciate it's probably hard to follow at that speed, but you'll be able to look back over it when you view the recording. And I'd particularly recommend having a look at that tutorial that Amanda mentioned. I've personally taught myself how to do some basic automation using that web tutorial, and it's pretty amazing. It's really it is really satisfying, as Amanda said, when you test the flow and it works. In my own case, probably felt a little bit too proud of myself, but I really recommend, as we said before, just start. There's, from having a look at those templates, fortunately, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Well, a lot of the challenges you're experiencing, somebody's probably already had a go, and the templates that are there for you to start with are a really great place to start. And start with something small. If you're thinking, oh, I wish I could do this, it's probably in there. So I'd really recommend having a look. And so to conclude, there's really a lot that you can do with the tech you've already got, and hopefully that's been clear from both this session and the earlier ones. It's really great to understand what your existing license level is, as you might need to upgrade license levels to get some of these features, but you likely have most of these already, so it's worth a conversation with your IT team. It's really important not to jump straight into a tech solution without first analysing the problem that you're trying to solve, and that's that conversation with the team around what are the challenges, what are the problems we're looking to solve. Understanding those needs and requirements and prioritising them might enable you to solve 90% of the problem through your existing technology or a process change, rather than spending lots of money on another solution and spending a lot of time configuring and onboarding bespoke software. We've seen lots of horror stories where people have gone down that path without doing the first piece. Identify the gaps between what you have and what you need once you've done that exercise, and discuss those requirements with your IT team or a legal tech consultant as part of the process. I think that's really important. Gathering the right data as well initially to understand your current state, mapping out the processes and measuring the current state so that you can track improvements when you do implement a new solution. And then if you do decide to buy bespoke tech, because sometimes that is the best solution, then it's really important to constantly assess that it is meeting your needs prior to reviewing and renewing that that technology, because they'll often be on a subscription service, and make sure that any changes in your business or legal requirements are going to continue to be met with that application. So that's it from us. That was a pretty quick journey through all of that, but very keen to take any questions.
It was an amazing journey through all of that. Thank you very much indeed. Really, really appreciate it. And folks, just to redirect you again to the Q&A bubbles at the bottom, you can see here, thank you very much for bringing up this slide, that Amanda and Jemima are very happy to be contacted after this. All their details are here, and they will be easily accessible with the recorded version of this as well. I've got just a couple of questions, folks, that I just wanted to ask you. There's lots of features to the stuff that you were talking about, and I'm just wondering to what extent, as folks were looking at this, you know, they're going to probably have some priorities with respect to the bits that are available. I guess the big advantage of this is that you can layer in things as you need them. So I guess the question is that right? Can you do that? Or, you know, are some things very dependent on others, so you've got to join them together? And if you can layer them in, are there any tools in particular in your experience that you're seeing are really getting heavy use, you know, heavy priority over others? So sorry, that was two questions, not one.
So there are a couple of essentials that I think teams need to start off with, and I might even stop sharing this slide and take you over to another screen. I guess some of the building blocks are things that we covered in the earlier session, like SharePoint, getting your structure right, Teams, getting that team structure right. You don't want to have too many levels. You don't want to have you know, a very long, flat hierarchy. You also don't want to have a very deep subfolder hierarchy either. So there is a balance between how you're going to structure your information, which is what we call that information and knowledge management. Once you've got some of those building blocks in place, you can then build some of that data into it to say, what's the metadata I want to capture about that information? And then I think you can then start to say, well, what are some of the things that I want to automate? Now, there may be things that you want to automate as a process or a workflow within your organization, but the great thing with Power Automate is you can also automate things that you haven't even thought of, like I want to get an email every day that shows me, you know, the weather, what's new on Planner that I might have missed, what's on my to-do list that I've prioritized as a top priority. So there can actually be really powerful ways that you can benefit as an individual from some of the skills, from some of the tools within Power Automate. And you don't necessarily need to start off big, as in, I want to solve, you know, every problem that my organization's facing. You know, one of those things that you need to do is plan in advance to say, what is the process that I'm going to go through, or what's a process map, step 1, step 2, step 3, where does my process start, where is my process going to end, so that when you are trying to do a Power Automate, you can say, this is my trigger, this is my action, this is what's going to start it, and then this is what's going to end it. It's either an email, or it's an approval, or it's a signature on a contract, or I'm going to store that document or store that piece of information in my SharePoint, and then this is where I'm going to save it. So there is a bit of a helicopter view before you dive into that more granular level view.
While you're doing that, or just in addition to that, a quick follow-up, is there benefit, and I know that this can sound somewhat self-serving, so, you know, but I think it's important to ask this question. In the conversation that you were just, you know, kind of reflecting on there, Amanda, it's like sometimes folks won't know what they don't know. So is there benefit, because they won't know all those bells and whistles, or necessarily with this issue there's that solution. Is there some benefit in the beginning of that process and conversation to have a conversation with folks like you, or to have a conversation with folks like others, and understanding that everybody's on different budgets, but just to help them set the scene so that they can help prioritise effectively and efficiently? Is that, if I may pose that question as well?
Sure. Jemima, do you want to answer that one?
I'm sorry, I just dropped out very briefly for a second. I heard the start and the end of the question, but not the actual guts of it.
Yeah, no worries. I'll repeat.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. These things happen. I'll repeat real quickly. I was just saying that, you know, folks may not know what they don't know. So is there benefit in being able to sit down with folks such as yourselves going through the processes and their priorities and getting your input at that early stage, even if they run with it themselves eventually, just to kind of help get through that process, I guess, in minimum time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love having those sorts of conversations. So I'm always happy to bounce that around with someone on an informal basis or to help guide a discussion in a kind of a workshop style. And it's really just a matter, I think, sometimes of, allowing yourself the time to talk about that while you're working and not focusing on the work and, getting the team together to do that.
Yeah.
And, once you work out, all right, what's on the list? What are the pain points? Let's pick the top 5. Let's then vote to prioritize and kind of build yourself a bit of a roadmap. You can DIY that pretty easily, but, without wanting to insert myself in the process, I'm very happy to help anyone who needs some advice on how or where to get started.
But then also revisit that so you can layer other stuff in as you need it, right?
Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
It's also a mindset and a thinking. When lawyers typically are in the middle of BAU, it's a different type of thinking to think more high level on the process and the strategy. And so sometimes you need to either stop BAU in order to dedicate the time to do it, kickstart that process by having a chat with us or with any other consultants just to say, look, this is what I'm trying to achieve, and get that steer to make sure that they're focusing their energy and the time in the right direction. Or if they don't have the time for it, then outsource it and just say, look, help me get started, help me get this built, and then I can take it from here. And I guess that's one of the other benefits of Microsoft is it's the organization's data, it's the company's data, it lives in their environment. And often, and not always, but internal IT teams have the ability to maintain and develop it, so they don't need to go back to a vendor every time they want to change, or there's an organisation restructure and they need to change the name of a business unit. So there's a lot of benefits to having it all live within the Microsoft world.
And strangely, having that external person may actually promote the sort of conversations between disciplines and teams that might actually help to overcome some of those, I guess, roadblocks as well, right?
Yeah, and we're often seeing that it's a legal team that comes with initial problem, but then it's not, the problems that they're facing aren't unique to legal. It brings in the procurement team, it brings in the risk and compliance team. They then look at what legal's doing and say, hey, that's great. Can we have something similar as well? We have a record, and in their case, the record they're looking to manage through a life cycle may not be a matter or a contract or a document, but it could be a different sort of process, like a compliance process or a marketing process or an HR process, and saying, how can we also use these tools to help our team? And so legal is often an entry point in an organisation to solve a particular problem. But then because of the nature of the legal team, they touch on so many other industries, they then need to say, well, we need to get the procurement guys into this process to talk about how we're going to manage the contracts in their life cycle, or bring in Salesforce or Workday or some other invoicing tool. So let's bring finance into the conversation. Does it integrate with these sorts of apps? So there's a number of dimensions to the conversation.
Yeah, it's a great point. And in-house, I guess the thing is too that you may want to be creating something that a whole bunch of different teams can basically access and use as well, right? Not just legal. So
yeah.
Did you want to have a chat about this?
I was just going to show, this is the Power Automate platform, and I can type in, any sort of, if I type in notification, I'm presented with a whole lot of templates. So there's so many things that have been pre-done. You don't need to reinvent the wheel each and every time. So I can send a notification when a form is received, and that is, automatically syncing to my Office account. So I don't have to actually do anything. It will know who I am, linked to my Active Directory, and I can set that up in a matter of minutes just by saying, this is the trigger and this is the output that I'm achieving. And it's actually, it's daunting, but it's the way Microsoft has presented this with no-code platform is it's really simple to be able to understand, and you actually don't need to be a developer. You don't need to have a science degree or a computer science degree to say, what is the input? What's the question? How am I going to create this link? How am I going to create this process?
Yep. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
And as you say, it's probably a bit of trial and error. So it probably does require a little bit of patience, right, to have a go and
yep.
do it like anything. But, we've all kind of been there and done that with various things. Got a question here, so I'm just going to pose it and then ask whichever of you or both of you would like to answer it. And that is, old SharePoint had some file name limits you can hit if you have too many folder levels. Has this changed?
I think with SharePoint Online, and I think one of the things that Microsoft has done a disservice is a lot of people thought, oh my God, SharePoint, 2007, SharePoint 2010, it was on-premise, it had a number of limitations, and a lot of people don't realise that SharePoint Online now is so much more powerful than those previous versions. So yes, a lot of those issues have been rectified. It doesn't have the limits that it used to have. You can collaborate as a team. It automatically tracks the version history. You can share links between your team so you're all working on the same document. Use the @ to tag people in comments. So I would highly recommend that if you are under the misconception that SharePoint from an old on-premise version of SharePoint has limitations, then you revisit that issue with SharePoint Online.
Yeah, fantastic. Folks, this has been an amazing kind of end of what's been an amazing series, and very, very grateful to, as I say, all of our friends at LOD who have contributed to this, and particularly to yourselves today. We hope that it's the first sub-series within the digital literacy series of many that we work with you on, and thank you again very much for that and for today. We really appreciate it. Folks, thank you everyone as well for attending. We will continue the digital literacy series next year. So this is the last one for this year. We will be back in 2021 and looking forward to it. And of course, follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn or Facebook. Again, thank you, Amanda and Jemima. Always a pleasure. This has been no exception. Just wonderful, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you, and thank you everyone. See you next time.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.